Hello everybody, welcome to Also Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference in how the video performs in the YouTube algorithm. I'm going to talk about some basketball. Is that okay with you? Okay, good. Let's first talk about Phoenix versus Denver Game 2 because wow. Definitely different from game 1, where the first game was just an absolute shootout. I don't remember what the final score was, but it was a lot higher than the final one here. This one was an ugly game. Jamal Murray shot horribly. Kevin Durant shot horribly. I don't think Devin Booker was as amazing. Really, the only guy who I think had a better performance than they did in game 1 was Nikola Jokic. Something I believe I talked about in my reaction to game 1 was that it was a very good sign for the Denver Nuggets that Jokic could have just a so-so game for his standard and still beat the Suns as convincingly as they did. In this game, with his teammates not really stepping up to the plate to the degree that they did in game 1, he stepped out to the plate and filled that void, and the Suns couldn't deal with that version of the Denver Nuggets either. They've been playing this game where they don't really double team him too much because the reason why Nikola Jokic is such an effective offensive player is because he's such a talented post scorer, and it's impossible to really double team him because he's always going to find the open man every time. They didn't really double him that much, but ultimately that means that he cooked on offense, and he had, I think, like 35, whatever the hell it was. Very, very good game from him. The title of this video is going to be Kevin Durant is a fraud, which is a little dramatic, but you know, which one of my titles over here isn't? I literally titled one of the videos The Empire Strikes Back. But yeah, 10 for 27 in this one. That's not good. In case you didn't know, that's very poor shooting. He got kind of the similar shots to what he had been getting. There was clearly a more deliberate effort from the Suns in this one to get their three-point shots up. Kevin Durant took 12, Devin Booker took 8, because the first game of this series, the Suns very much lost on the math front because they were not hitting threes, they were hitting mid-range shots, while the Nuggets were hitting a ton of threes. You know, 3 equals more than 2. They also lost the math battle in this game from free throw shooting because, as much as I saw some people complain about it, the Phoenix Suns don't play a brand of basketball that is conducive to getting to the free throw line. Now, 5 free throw attempts is pretty low, but in general, when your 3 best players' go-to shot is just pulling up rather than actually getting into the teeth of the defense, then yeah, you're not going to get to the line all that much. And really, I think that's the issue with the Phoenix Suns. They have an overabundance in shot creation and mid-range shooting while not having the standard conventions of an NBA offense that are the most mathematically, good, like three-point shooting, shots in the paint, getting to the free throw line. There's the discussion around mid-range shots has hopefully become less annoying than what it has been in the past few years. I think almost everyone understands at this point, hopefully, the math on mid-range shots is not great, but it's important to have that skill set. It's important to be able to hit those shots because you're not always going to be able to generate the most mathematically good shot. So you need to be able to hit the not mathematically great shot when that's all you got. The issue is the way that Phoenix plays is consistently getting that mathematically not good shot, even if they are hitting them at a respectable rate. In this game, not so much, especially in game 1, it was that case, even though there was not as much as it was projected to be, and not as much as it was against the Clippers. But you get my point. Even if the Suns have a good mid-range shooting game, the math doesn't really check out when the Nuggets are hitting threes, when the Nuggets are getting more shots in the paint, when the Nuggets are getting to the free throw line more. So that's really been their issue in the case of this Suns game. If Kevin Durant just simply drove more rather than pulling up on every possession, it would probably have resulted in better math in their favor. But ultimately, those are also things that I expect a situation change with this roster can mitigate, putting some guys out there who can be more spot-up players. I think getting rid of Chris Paul might be in this team's best interest, but it might not be logistically feasible given how much money he's making at the age he's making it. But I think his ability as a shot creator is kind of redundant when you already have Booker and Durant taking all the mid-range shots you really don't need another guy who's going to take a bunch of them whenever he is going to shoot. So it'd probably be better to have a point guard out there who can just shoot the ball and still play make like Chris Paul does, not like Chris Paul does, who's one of the greatest playmakers of all time. That's not something you can easily replace. But it's not as impactful as it was because his scoring gravity isn't what it was, and he's not really spacing the floor because he's not hitting his three-pointers, and he's hesitant to even take those three-pointers. His mid-range shot isn't what it was. Yeah, it's just not ideal. Still feel like Denver is going to handle this series pretty easily, but Game 2 all but solidified that. Like, you know, you could have, if you were a Phoenix Suns fan trying to, like, cope with Game 1, say, hey, Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon have had these outlier scoring games, right? Outlier efficiency, more production than you typically expect from them. And that's true, but that's just in replacement of what Nikola Jokic was capable of doing at any given moment, as proved by this game. So, yeah, I just don't think they have what it takes to win the series, because I have not believed strongly in the Phoenix Suns from the get-go. And I think the roster needs more than just Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Like, people take a look at people doubting the Suns, and they look at it as though people are doubting Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. I'm not. I am doubting their ability to carry an otherwise poorly constructed roster, an otherwise not built to succeed right now roster. It would be a strong testament to the quality of those players if they were capable of doing it. And obviously these have been on Denver's home court, so it's not impossible that they strike back and immediately win these next two games on their home floor. But I doubt it. I imagine they'll probably win one and lose the other, and they're not going to make a 3-1 comeback. That's my guess, but that's my thoughts on that game. Let's move on to James Harden having 45 points in Game 1 versus the Boston Celtics. Now, I don't have much to say in regards to James' performance. He was just ridiculous. Obviously, there was a quote that he had after the game that, like, he's allowed to believe, but it was a sentiment that a lot of people do believe in with James. That's kind of annoying to me because it's just not true. He said something along the lines of, back when I was scoring like 35 points a game, people said that was not conducive to winning. Therefore, I started doing like 20 and 11, and then people now say James Harden isn't what he used to be. I understand why on the surface that could be a true narrative, but frankly, the eye test proves otherwise, and the stats prove otherwise, because if a player who has high volume scoring is to reduce that volume of scoring, you typically expect that means they're going to cut out the bad shots that they take and really only take the good shots, which means their efficiency should go up. But James Harden's efficiency has not gone up in Philadelphia or Brooklyn. It has gone down. And that's because James Harden regressed significantly. His first step is not what it used to be, and his jump shot is not what it used to be. He shot like 32% from three over the past couple of years. But in this game, that jump shot was going in all the time. It was pretty ridiculous. He started off the game with a ton of mid-range shots, some pull-up three-pointers. He killed Al Horford on the drop coverage. They really have to adjust from that. I think even if Embiid is playing, you still have to worry about that a little bit more. But I will say also, James Harden having a good playoff performance isn't an outlier like so many people were acting like it was. Obviously, this was his playoff career high, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, you know, this was the standard for him. But it's more shocking now because he's regressed. But James Harden is one of the best playoff performers of all time, and that is just objectively true. For his playoff numbers in Houston, he averages like 28, 6, and 8 on respectable true shooting in the postseason. Now, is he very good in closeout games? That's a different story. But the playoffs are not just closeout games. The playoffs are at least 3 games before the closeout game, and James Harden is usually good up until the closeout. Now, you can knock a player's talent for them being not as clutch or folding in the wrong moment, sure, but the overall product, the overall production that James Harden has brought to the playoffs has been largely all-time great level production. It just simply is. Regardless of how you feel about James Harden, it's just true. You can knock him for those poor performances in elimination games more than I do and view him as a worse playoff performer, but he objectively has some of the best playoff numbers the playoffs have ever seen. With that said, for Boston, a lot of people were hitting the panic button in this one, and I understand why they would do that, not to mention the fact that they, of course, gave the Hawks a little bit too much leeway. Like, it damn near was a 7-game series. The Celtics stepped on the gas at the right moment at the end of Game 6, but it looked like Atlanta was maybe going to take that one, and that would have been ridiculous. I don't feel great about Boston, not nearly as good as I did about them last year. That said, I don't think this game is that massive of a reason to panic, because Joel Embiid and what he's going to be able to do if he comes back, let alone win, he probably will not be the MVP that he will probably end up getting soon. He probably will not be that good, but he will be a positive, sure. But James Harden having 45, hitting damn near every jump shot he took, DeAnthony Melton off of the bench being massive. I think he had over 20 points and shot the ball well. Those are things that are not going to happen every game in this series. You're not going to get Melton and Harden combining for 70 every game. If you are, you're screwed. I won't deny that. But I think this is... I don't want to make the same take I did with the Heat Bucks series, because my take about that first game was like the Heat won in such an outlier fashion that means that the Bucks should be fine. And then of course they weren't. So I'm not going to lean all the way into that argument. I will just say I wouldn't be too freaked out if I was Boston. I also wouldn't be too critical of Boston, because ultimately, while there were some defensive coverage issues with this team, I definitely didn't feel as though the shots James was getting were like all terrible defense by any means. Usually there was a hand up to some degree or another. Could have been better, but James also isn't going to make all those shots even if you do give them to him. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much. I'd be worried as a whole about the Celtics versus, you know, when they play an actual team that can really bother them, like maybe if Joel Embiid is like 80% plus James Harden's really killing it, then yeah, Philly could win this series. But if Embiid's not going to be very good or not even show up whatsoever, it's really quite up in the air what's going to happen in that regard, then Boston should still win this series. It really depends though, for sure. Anything can happen. I'm kind of done making solid hard line this is definitely gonna happen predictions, because Lord knows with this postseason, no one's predictions have been very good. Especially mine, frankly. So yeah, with that said, I guess that's it. Shout out to Brady for editing this video, and goodbye.